Hello. Excuse me.
Hola.
I'm okay. I'm up in the mountains. It's kind of cold, but
How
it's wonderful.
are you?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I bet you it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's
I bet
excuse me,
you it's
getting a nice
beautiful
little
there, huh?
dusting of snow. So tomorrow snowboarding should be really nice.
Okay. Just Wayne should be logging in too. We're early, so we have a few more minutes. Give people time to join in.
Not a problem. I'm the one that deals with all the, transactions.
Um, welcome. Everyone just come in. We have a few minutes. We're early. Start at 7 o'clock. Wayne Lassane should be jumping on shortly as well.
Hey,
Hello.
I'm good. It's great. It's like 70 degrees
How
outside
are
today. It
you?
feels amazing outside. It's nice and blue. Hot.
Oh, don't show off. Don't
You look,
brag.
we've
Don't show
been
off.
pounded with
Don't come on
rain.
here showing
It's raining
off.
tonight and tomorrow and next day. Look, we got sinkholes and snow. Like, hey, we don't do this.
Well, I love being in the mountains, but it's like 10 degrees here.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Tomorrow will be a really great day.
It was actually in the 70s here too today, but yesterday was storming and raining so
Yeah.
bad here in North Carolina. It was awful. Today was kind of beautiful though.
Yeah. Look,
But not like
we
California.
killed the
Sunny
whole myth this year
California,
about it
I
never
hate.
rains in Southern California. It's rained for the past feel like 2 months.
Are they going to change the?
Huh?
Really? Does it
Oh,
flood there
whenever it
where
rains
y'all
out here
live?
because they aren't built for rain.
Does
It
it
floods all
flood?
the time. Yeah, the streets flood. The people cars get washed away. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, flash flood warnings.
I
Yeah.
I heard there was a lobbying effort to change the lyrics to that song.
Oh yeah, definitely right now.
Hey guys, welcome. Let's get started. I just want to go over a few admin things. I've been getting questions as to if I'm doing therapy. Yes, I am doing therapy and psychological assessments, but in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I do telehealth, but again, it's out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. I just started back to do offering services, so I am in the process of becoming panel by insurance companies, but I do take Blue Cross Blue Shield now and Medicaid, and I'm waiting to get on other panels. So yes, I do see patients. I do trauma work, especially, and I see children as well. For psychological testing, kids as young as seven and older. So on the website, you guys may notice a couple books are sold out. Anxiety Relief for Kids and Mindfulness Meditation for Beginners. Those are sold out, but I just went and ordered some more. So they should be back on the site by the end of this week, next week. But we do still have Practicing Mindfulness on sale at the bookstore. So thank you guys for purchasing those. The magazines are still selling, and thank you guys for purchasing the magazines. All items from the bookstore are shipped out on Mondays. I just shipped out some items today. So every Monday I ship out items. And lastly, we still have ad space in the magazine for April's issue, ad space and space for the resource listing. So if you're a licensed practitioner or servicer that provides services for mental health and you want to get on our resource listing, we do still have space for that, and we still have space for ads to get in this April's issue. And lastly, but not least, we are always looking for writers to contribute articles. Check out the magazine by visiting the website, mentalhealthtalk.live, LIVE, mentalhealthtalk.live, and see if you would be a good fit to write in one of our columns. We're always looking for writers, and we're accepting writers on a rolling basis. So those are the answers to some of the questions that I've been getting in. Thank you guys so much for your support. Okay, let's get started. This is Leslie Rogers. I am the owner of Mental Health Talk and the publisher and editor for Mental Health Talk magazine. And we have with us Wayne Lassane, who's on the way to get his certification for therapy, and he's a coach, and he's doing wonderful things. I see you all over Instagram and talking about, you know, your practice and your brand, and I'm so proud of you and Melissa. You guys are doing great things. Absolutely. And we have Dr. Lowell Whiteman of 360 Mindset, and he's an NFL performance coach. He does so much with athletes because we know athletes are struggling. We often, when we talk about mental health, we talk about athletes, but guys, we got to keep in mind the coaches too, and other parties in that population as well are struggling or have struggled too with mental health. So he's doing a lot of great things. Check out his podcast, again, 360 Mindset. Make sure you guys follow them on Instagram and on their platforms, because they're spewing out a lot of good nuggets for you all to take away as well. So last week we talked about anxiety, and the conversation was so awesome that we were asked to do a part 2. And I got news for you guys. We're also going to do a part 3, because we're going to have a special guest next Monday, Dr. Amir Rashidian, who's the founder of the Mid-Atlantic Care Pocket Center. And he manages stress from a physiological perspective. And you guys should hear him speak publicly. He does an amazing job. He's a public speaker. He does work around anxiety. And he has a lot of knowledge to share. So he's going to be on next Monday with us to round out this topic, right? So today is part 2 of anxiety. So as you guys know, so just to recap, guys, last week we talking about different types of anxiety. Specifically, we talked about generalized anxiety disorder, which we said was excessive worry that's difficult to control. Excessive worry that's difficult to control about day-to-day activities, maybe excessive worry about work, personal life, environmental stressors, school. A lot of kids go through generalized anxiety with school, performance, and things of that sort, but it's difficult to control. We talked about social anxiety, which is fear or scrutiny of evaluation. Fear of scrutiny or evaluation when around others. You get around others in public settings, etc., and you're afraid what other people think about you. It causes great anxiety and things of that sort. Panic disorder, we talked about the physiological symptoms of panic disorder, such as rapid heartbeat, maybe headaches, gastrointestinal problems, hyperventilation, and other physiological symptoms of panic attack as well. We also talked about triggers. Guys, we talked about a lot last week. Yes. I was putting a list together about what we talked. We gave some really great information last week. Triggers, which were people, places, events, etc., that promote anxiety. You had environmental triggers, personal triggers, smell, sights, smell, sights, feelings, memories. Memories can trigger up different types of, symptoms. Cues or warning signs. We have physical cues, which is sensory. Again, when you talk about that, how do you know when you're about to become, how do you know when you're anxious, or how do you know when a panic attack is starting to come on? And you have cues even for anger. How do you know when you're about to become angry? You know, your body tells you when you're about to become angry, right? And those cues are important because when you can tell, when you can identify your cues, then you can de-escalate anger before it gets out of control, right? So your cues are warning signs like physical, the rapid heartbeat, the sweaty hands, the racing thoughts, the nausea, the GI problems. When I become angry, or when I'm about to become angry, my eyes water up, or the back of my hair or my neck stand up. So I can tell when I'm about to become angry when something tells me, Leslie, okay, it's time to walk away now. Just walk away, right? You know, it takes practice, and it takes practicing learning how to become in tune with your body and your sensations of your body. Behavioral cues, again, hyperventilating, clenching fists, pacing back and forth, raising your voices. You know, when you're in a discussion and your voice starts to elevate, you know that, you're starting to become angry or anxious or etc. Emotional cues such as anger, sadness, crying. And anger is a natural emotion, guys. We all become angry, right? It's just about managing anger. Cognitive cues, the way we think about things, thoughts that occur in response to anxiety-provoking events. I'm a failure. I'm less than, right? Those negative thoughts that follow an anxiety-provoking event. I'm not safe. I'm not safe. And social anxiety, right? You go into a public setting, you feel I'm not safe, and you become anxious, right? And those physiological symptoms may follow. And then we talked about reducing anxiety. I'm not going to get into that right now because at the end, near end of this session, I do want to get into some more, with the three of us, get into some more ways to reduce anxiety with some examples. So I'll let you guys take it away, and
Go for it, Wayne.
Let's get started.
Oh, no. No, so anyway, yeah, I was just thinking about the conversation we had last week, and afterwards, I was just thinking like, wow, like a lot of people, like to what we were talking about, a lot of people don't even understand, the cues of what anxiety even looks like, when it starts to build up in them. And I think that if they could just, again, going back to what we talked about last week, if they could understand those things, it could help them in so many different ways in navigating what's going on in that moment right now by slowing things down and just taking a breath, And so and afterwards, I had to just after the conversation, I went back and I was like, wow, like, man, I've had anxiety a lot of times around a lot of things and never realize it until I start to really think about it. Just so many things came up, and just in that, and just in having that information helps you to navigate so many different things in your life whenever anything comes up for you. When you're in an uncomfortable situation, maybe like you say, public speaking or public environment where there's a whole bunch of people around, or something that just makes you feel uncomfortable, that you're out of your element, or anything like that can bring up anxious feelings. So I think that all those, it was some great conversation last week. So.
Now, when you were in the military,
oh yeah, I
you
was
got to feel
19
anxious
years
while
old.
you wondering.
Yeah.
When you went to the military, you were young, right? So did you experience anxiety, going into the military, or while you were in the military?
Through the training that they give you. It's all about learning how to manage your anxiety and how to still be able to perform in your task at hand, or and still, show up basically, regardless of what's going on around you. So they would do things like just basically call it shock treatment. We'll just call it shock treatment. There's so much shock treatment in the military to get you to where you have to still think while all these things are going on, you know what I mean? So yeah, that was often. That was almost a daily occurrence through basic training. Well, actually, it is a daily occurrence in basic training. So the whole purpose of it is to weed out, basically kind of break you down and kind of teach you tools to work through these things and kind of coping mechanisms. So that is the job of basic training, to break you all the way down, strip you of everything, of all the things that you thought and knew that how to get through these processes, and then just to give you these tools and try to help you with all these different, it's brainwashing to an extent, right? You know, and it's just reprogramming your brain to think of things in a different way. And so what it was is that once you're able to trust the process that has been given to you, no matter what's going on, you're still going to go moving forward and do the things that you need to do in that moment, if that makes any sense. Now, and I'm assuming that, you know, it's the same way with sports as well, though. It's the same way with sports, too. Yeah.
And that's
Well, and I'll broaden the platform. It's any conditions where there's very focused attention to goals, like in the military, it's survival. If you didn't go through that training, you're not sensitive to saving a life, your own life as well as others. In athletics, it's knocking somebody down with a large amount of force, avoiding that force so you can catch a ball, hit a ball, run really fast. So there are these plateaus of success, whether that's artificially put in your head, like you mentioned, brainstorming, Wayne. It's a mental conditioning that isn't necessarily nice. Now, I use the word mental conditioning a lot, but I use it in a positive reference. So you are mentally conditioning oneself through the help of a trainer, a coach, the sergeant, whoever it might be. But there's varying degrees of reasonableness in the approach to it. So for me, I've had experiences across all different levels of performance, which is what my gig is. I'm about performance. I'm a mental performance coach that works with sustaining performance, judging the performance as to the safety of the individual. Because as you pointed out, in the military, and still today, for years and years and years, we were only focused on survival. If I don't teach you this way, you or someone else could die because I failed at raising your level of urgency and sensitivity through the training. What they didn't consider, in the military for years, was what were the consequences to the human being?
Exactly.
And now we're getting a little bit better at that, but the reality of the military's primary focus, which is safety of our country, honoring our flag, all of those things, there's a very interesting dynamic going on of the balance. Yes, saving lives, training you to be prepared, and putting you in an anxious moment, a panic moment, and hopefully you're going to manage it and survive it to the point of being a good soldier, if you will. Trying not to use it to turn a pun there, but for me, anxiety can come up in almost any setting with any circumstances that you might face. I don't think anybody can deny that they've felt anxious moments. And I say it that way because there's degrees of anxiety, as Leslie pointed out very, very clearly about the different types of anxiety, to the extremes with PTSD, to the more casual, just general anxiety based on a sudden change. You didn't expect it. Oh, I feel a little palpitation in my heart, or my hands start to sweat. Those are the ones where you're going on your first date with a girl or a girl or guy you really love, and you're going to get a little anxious, right? And then you go from there to the really extreme levels of anxiety that in some cases, especially with the military, are forced upon you under the impetus of, we do this so we save your life. Or in sports, the coach is mean and aggressive and pushes you really hard so that you generate the discipline of both mind and body to help you deliver under the toughest of competitions. Scoring a basket. This is the March Madness. We're coming into the finals of both the men and women's basketball tournament. You're seeing young people do some amazing things, and it would be without training that has anxious moments. But these are young men and women that have survived. And I don't want to take away from what we're going to offer at the end, but the way to handle anxiousness is positivity. So these young kids in basketball tournaments are taking on these challenges, these physically and emotionally aggressive challenges, anxious moments, because they love the game. The positive is they love the sport, and they sacrifice their minds and bodies during these competitions to deliver results. Now, one could debate whether that's a good thing or even a healthy thing for young people. But I think that's why what we do is so beneficial. It brings perspective to the circumstances that people face, like anxious moments. Those are circumstances we face every single day.
Exactly. And so let's say, so anxiety is a fear of the unknown, right? Mm-hmm. Anxiety is a fear of unknown. And one of you guys said earlier is avoidance, right? We avoid situations that make us uncomfortable because it keeps us safe. So we talked about survival. Anxiety is a survival as a means of safety. And we're going to talk about PTSD in a couple of weeks, right? But we talk about PTSD, which the main underlying component is avoidance, right? Hyperarousal and hypervigilant, right? When you're in the military and when you're certain in law enforcement and certain other environments, you're taught to be hypervigilant and hyperaroused because you're there to keep yourself safe. But what happens when you exit that environment and come home, then your body is still on hyperarousal. It's still on that hyper mode, right?
Well, and Leslie, let me add something here to the military example, especially because it's hypervigilance and hyperarousal with structure. Mm-hmm. Hypervigilance and hyperarousal outside of the military arena or anything like the military, it could be police officers, fire departments, and so on. It's a very structured profile to that arousal and that vigilance. You know, you climb a ladder in a certain way, you put on your equipment a certain way, but you need to get hyperly aroused and vigilant when you put on that equipment.
Special forces people too. It's simulation. So it's a simulation of real world experiences. So what happens is, even if it's not real world experiences, it's a simulation. So when you go into that environment in the military, like for instance, today I was talking about, I was going to different military components out here in Fayetteville to talk to them about the magazine. And we were talking about that, and we were talking about basic training. And I used to have a lot of veterans say, "Oh, Dr. Rogers, I wasn't in combat. So, that's not why I'm anxious." No, you weren't in combat. You didn't fight in combat, or you weren't deployed to combat environments. But that basic training is a simulated experience of combat, of what it would be like in combat. And it's teaching you to keep yourself alive. So that when I say that, when your body is in a hypervigilant state or hyper-aroused state, it's because of that simulation of real experience. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I meant by structure.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by structure. Yeah. It's the rules and guidelines.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to give you an example of, usually it's a 3-person prong that goes through a door. You don't know what's on the other side of the door. The person in the middle is the person who's going to be the last one in. But there's a structure of trust of the other two. When you break that door, they're going to be killing anything on either left or right, and then you've got everything in the middle. But you've got to have that structured trust, structured addressment of your weapons, structured trust in your equipment that you go in there. So that, in fact, is simulated off the real engagement. But that simulation, to your point, if you don't ever go into combat, you still know what that means. That structure tells you what that means, and it could create anxious moments in an everyday life if you're ever faced with triggers and cues that pop it for you.
Absolutely. And then you generalize it to other environments, right?
Yeah.
So that's why when you leave hyper-vigilant and hyper-aroused environments, even under simulation, when you leave and come back home to your family into a normal environment, it's generalized to other settings, right?
And to your point of last week, when people around you don't recognize those signals and those triggers or you're not aware of them, so when that person comes back to a regular environment, let's say home, to where, anything can kind of set them off, whatever, and then people not understanding or knowing that could be a huge problem at the house, because it's hard to assimilate back into a regular everyday society when you've been through certain training, may it be sports, military, police, fire, whatever, and then now have to come back and be a regular person and not have these things on you it would be really hard. So you should, so it definitely takes a support system around you to understand and knowing what you've been through and what you've gone through and what does your job entail to be able to help support you when you are at home. I mean, when you're home. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cultural adjustments, right? Culturalization and reculturalization, right? And it's a 3-part way. You know, you go into the military as one person. You know, I used to tell my veterans all the time, it's your parents, you were birthed by your parents, and then you go into the military, and then all of that stuff that you learn go out the window, and then the military has its own baby. And then the military, you know, takes you through all this training and all this normalization and all this stuff. And then they put you back out into the real world. And now that self that you were before you went into the military is now gone somewhere, right? Yeah. It's lost somewhere. And you're fighting, trying to get that person back when you get back into the real world, right?
There are some debates about whether that is really gone or not once you leave the military.
It's not gone. It's still there. It's just a matter of trying to get that person back. It's just, it's never gone.
And what I was getting to is that we haven't done a good job of letting both family and the military personnel know about what their role is in identifying cues, defining triggers with the help of the military person with their family. We just haven't done a lot of good work with that. And I've had more than my fair share of fairly agitated conversations with leadership in both sports and the military about their role. Just because they've signed their release papers doesn't mean that there's not a tether to help and guide them a little bit. And I'm glad we have captured some of this and are helpful to the people that are paying attention to us.
And to your point, like, I don't know if things have changed now, but I know when I got out the military in I think 1999, it was more of a lot of times when soldiers out process, it was kind of like all right, you know, thank you for your service, and kind of push you out the door. And I don't think I don't think it was a lot of attention given to helping people really transition mentally out of the military and into civilian life. And to your point about sports, I have a friend of mine who played in the NFL for 10 years, and he had gotten paralyzed in the league while he was in, and he's good now. His body is straight, and he was going around. He's huge on mental health, and he was going around helping athletes transition from playing professional sports to civilian life, to help them with their dieting, their mental health, and he's amazing. You know, he helps them with like yoga and all this kind of stuff. So again, you know, and I don't know what the process is to out process from sports, but there definitely should, you know, me being in the military and seeing how that was, I can only imagine that it's possibly kind of like the same way, kind of like, thank you for playing, and we'll see you later, kind of.
Yeah, no, it is basically a lot like that. And there are so many grounded similarities in what needs to be positioned for mental wellness with those athletes, just like with military personnel. Same thing with retirement of police officers, with firefighters, even emergency health technicians, EMTs, anybody that's in a fight or flight moment in a routine basis, whether it's themselves or the people they serve, you're dealing with high levels of energy, that hypervigilant, that states of hyper energy delivery, and yet you're also asked to shift gears very quickly to bring it down, to bring it down to a calmed place. And that in itself, off the scene, causes anxiety with that professional, because they're in a fire. They're in the middle of a fire, a car accident, and they have to just, you're okay. Just breathe. Look at me. You're fine. And look, I'm speaking from experience because I was in that EMT scenario. And I know what it made me feel like after the fact when I got off that scene, and and there was nobody there to help me process it. We just said, you're doing your job. You're trained to do your job.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Absolutely. So this is important. Transitions are important out of these high stress environments, right? Potentially. More than 3 million men in the U.S. have panic attacks, panic disorder specifically, agoraphobia, or any agoraphobia is a fear of being in a crowded space, fear of escape. Yep. There's no way to get out. And again, remember, social anxiety, guys, is fear of being scrutinized by others in a crowded place and around others. Agoraphobia. So more than 3 million men in the U.S. have panic disorder, agoraphobia, or other phobias. Let me see. Some symptoms that men may show, because men and women show symptoms for mental illnesses differently, and men disclose symptoms differently, which sometimes can lead to misdiagnoses, right? Symptoms may include spending a lot of time at work or on sports, physical symptoms such as headaches, digestive problems and pain, misuse of alcohol or drugs, right? You see there's a high prevalence rate of substance use in military populations and law enforcement populations, right? Controlling violent or abusive behavior. And this is, again, why sometimes there are misdiagnoses, right? A lot of times when we diagnose men, they often get diagnosed as the more harsher diagnoses like schizophrenia or behavior disturbances, anger, and things of that sort, as opposed to depression, right? So anger, irritability, aggressiveness, inappropriate anger, rage, risky behavior such as reckless driving, noticeable changes in mood, energy level, or appetite, difficulty concentrating, feeling restless or on edge. Both men and women can experience these symptoms, feel sad, hopeless, empty, feel extremely tired, have difficulty sleeping or sleep too much, not getting pleasure from activities, they usually enjoy, and suicidal thoughts, right? So I thought that was important to uncover. So for many mental health disorders, men and women, for many mental health disorders, men are less likely to speak up and get treatment. They are also less likely to be diagnosed because of this. Knowing the statistics can help raise awareness about men's mental health and encourage men to take a step toward getting treatment.
Yes. So, what comes up for me when I heard you reading all that was that I don't want to leave out, because we're speaking about military and sports, and I think that unforgotten demographic, or really not even thought about. I think that we think about it, but I think that society on a whole doesn't think about this. Is about people from lower income places, the inner city people. Like, I think that because of the way life is in those environments, it breeds so much anxiety, right? So now you got these people who get like professional contracts to play sports or entertainers or whatever, and then they still take that anxiety into the world with them, what they've now gone into. And I love hearing entertainers now talk about they have anxiety and they deal with social awkwardness, because it stems from basically where you come from. You come from that harsh environment where you have to be, on like almost in fight or flight mode all the time. Anxiety is easily induced when people come around you, crowd you, or you go into a crowded space. You don't feel safe. You don't feel comfortable. You got to sit with your back towards the wall so you can always see the door. All these different things. And so, and I think that's, and I don't even know if they even understand in those environments that they're even dealing with such high anxiety and why they respond and react the way they do. Because again, they don't have any idea sometimes of what it is that their body is feeling and what's happening to them in those moments.
And Wayne, you remind me of the phrase, it takes a village, because the individual doesn't recognize many times that they're putting themselves into conditions that will create anxiety and anxiousness to them. And especially when it's men, to the numbers that Leslie just gave us, they fight the realization because it seems like it's a diminishing realization.
Yes.
I'm diminished if I recognize this. In entertainment, I've faced it a lot with both men and women about their looks. They don't want to admit that they are okay because they think they have to go down a few more pounds or put on a certain kind of face. There's a lot of, but then as I say that, I want to remind us all that the brain is a very powerful muscle, and it can take on so much abuse, and much of it is sublime. It's not something we think is abuse, but it's gradually just breaking down and breaking down and breaking down certain things. So I tend to look at the kids of some of my clients as to what the kids are doing. Like, for example, if you saw a child on the edge of the playground, not mixing with the group of kids, would you be sensitized to that at all? I ask teachers to be sensitized to that and go get that kid, because that kid could be a child who's dealing with emotions about self-identity. They're dealing with not being part of the group, or it could be something that's going on at home, or both. The same thing is true with adults. When you go into a club or a bar and you see people sitting around the periphery of, let's say, a pool hall, and they haven't moved for the whole time you're there, that person has not moved from that spot. That's the person I'd go over. I don't know them at all. I go, hey, how you doing? What's your favorite hobby? And just see if I can engage them, because we don't do enough of that to make sure that we reach out in a it takes a village kind of mindset.
Yes.
To investigate it. So yes, a lot of what we talk about is science-ese. It's science-esque kind of language, but it's really simple behaviors that our grandmas, our moms, our aunties have all taught us, if we were really listening, to address people. It's people like Oprah Winfrey that say, do random acts of kindness to engage people, so that we understand exactly where they're at with their anxiousness and their anxiety.
Absolutely. Male depression and suicide. I know we're talking about anxiety, but I think it's important to add. Although women attempt suicide more often than men do, men are more likely to complete suicide. And we all know, we should know why, right? Men use methods that are more likely to cause death, such as guns, may act more impulsively on suicidal thoughts, and show fewer warning signs, such as talking. Right.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. I was just going to say, Leslie, it's interesting you bring that up, because men tend to look at more violent tools, because that's what they've been raised with, that masculine mentality, right? Guns and jumping off a building, driving a car really fast. I had an uncle who committed suicide by using his car. And he knew he could. He knew exactly what he had to do to drive his car a certain way at a certain speed towards a certain object. And it wasn't until after he did that anybody in the family started asking themselves, what did I see that I could have prevented, or I could have asked him about to help him with? And I'm not going to go into the details of my uncle's past, because it's a long story it's common to a lot of people in the world. That there are signs, and we don't pay attention to them because we have our own lives to live. I get it. But if they're part of your trusted group, your family, your friends, your colleagues in the military, your colleagues on a team, and you start hearing and or seeing things that are indicative of the kind of cues and signals we're sharing tonight, then ask a question. Ask to go see them. Go visit with them.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And research also shows that when men contemplate suicide, they're more likely to act on it than women.
Yep.
Yeah. So just know to take. So when someone talks about it, if they even mention it maybe a little bit, take it very seriously.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this article is saying effective treatments, asking for help may be difficult for men, but going without treatment may make things even worse, right? So asking for help and not feeling ashamed at doing so. If you are experiencing any of the symptoms, talk to your doctor or mental health professional. And there's a new number now, instead of that long 855 number. Now you can dial 988. Can somebody put that in the chat, please? Star 988. If you confidential, you can call and talk to someone. Star 988. Okay, so now we get into the great stuff. So we talk about all of this stuff, the physiological symptoms, what anxiety look like. So then how do you reduce anxiety? I'm glad you asked. There's several ways that you can reduce anxiety. One of the number one ways that we as providers tend to treat anxiety is with, along with medication if needed, right? I always say, speak with a psychiatrist to see if you're an appropriate candidate for psychotropic medications for high anxiety that's hard to control, especially when you get into panic attacks and stuff like that. Because panic attacks can be debilitating. It can be debilitating, right? For those of you who have had panic attacks, I've had a history of panic attacks, right? So, but, you know, relaxation, breathing are, you know, the top go-tos for anxiety. Mindfulness meditation has become more popular in recent years and is used by many of us clinicians as a treatment for depression and anxiety and other disorders as well. The practice of mindfulness meditation involves sitting comfortably or lying down, focusing on your breathing, and then bringing your mind back to the present without drifting off to other environmental extractions and things of that stuff, like distractions, right? Breathing, deliberately copying and relaxing breathing pattern seems to calm the nervous system that controls the body's involuntary functions. Controlled breathing can cause physiological changes that include lower blood pressure and heart rate, reduce levels of stress hormones in the blood. Because I think Dr. Whiteman talked about earlier the fight or flight, right? When all of those hormones are released into your body, cortisol hormones released into your body, and your body is supposed to naturally go back to a resting state. If it can't do that, then your body becomes on overload and all those hormones become piling on top of each other. And then once you get on overload, then that's when those symptoms or medical issues can come up, like rapid heart rate, you know, risk for stroke, heart attack, things of that sort, gastrointestinal problems, you know. So you have to be able to balance out that stress. We all go through stressful situations. Life is just stressful. You can't avoid that, right? Yeah. No matter who we are, you can't avoid it. But there's ways that you can balance that out. So you have mindfulness meditation, you have breathing, and there's several breathing techniques that I use. I use the 5-5-5 method, but there's 4-7-8 methods. And all that means is you breathe in for 5, hold for 5, and then exhale for 5. And I usually do that with, you know, either calming music to help self-soothe, or I go to, I tend to go to videos that help me, walk me through, and guide me through that guidedness through the breathing and relaxation. And then you have grounding techniques. Grounding techniques, guys, are mindfulness practices that can lower anxiety by bringing your awareness to the present moment. They can help get fast relief, drawing your attention away from anxiety and helping you feel better. For example, grounding techniques, guys, if you're having a panic attack in public, right? This is called the 5 steps to help ground yourself. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Acknowledgement, 5 things you see around you. Acknowledge 5 things you see around you. I put examples. Around me, I see picture frames, I see a clock, I see drawings, a light, I see a vase. If I was having a panic attack now. Acknowledge 4 things you can touch around you. Usually when you're out in public and you're having a panic attack, you can self-soothe by touching a person that's next to you, by grabbing their shoulder or grabbing their arm, right? Something you can touch, right, that you can feel. Again, grounding is bringing yourself back to the present moment. 3, 5 things you can hear, such as sirens. What do you hear around you, right? Do you hear a dog barking? Do you hear cars driving outside? What do you hear around you? 2, things you can smell. What can you smell around you? Can you smell perfume? Can you smell a certain food item? Can you smell something in the air? What do you smell around you? And 1 thing you can taste, food, etc. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you can see around you, 4 things you can touch around you, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can. And this is a grounding technique. So these techniques often work. It takes practice. It doesn't work overnight. And a lot of times I tell people, when you engage in breathing and relaxation, it does not stop panic attacks from coming. If a panic attack is going to happen, it's going to happen. But what it does do is help you how to de-escalate. And
Leslie, I have to bolt in a few minutes, but I wanted to leverage off of what you said and let you know that every session I have with an individual athlete, I talk about awareness methodology, which is basically my word for grounding techniques because it involves all 5 senses. So as you were talking, I put my finger in my mouth because I wanted to taste and feel all at the same time. I wanted to really activate an anxiety strategy to fight that. But in a serious way, though, visual refocus, like you said, looking at different things. The other one is what I call a texture technique. Do either of you have a special blankie when you were a kid, something really soft that you just love to touch? Well, I've brought that forward into adulthood for some of my athletes when they have anxious moments or their brain changes during a competition or they're getting ready for a very competitive race. I said, you need to ground yourself into a calm place. So I actually have some of my athletes, they have taken swatches of their blankets from their nanas or their moms so that they could keep it in their pocket. Now it's like a touchstone. And we've done this in a more adult way, more sophisticated way with touchstone kind of thinking, with a little rock or stone or something that you put in your pocket. But it's very, very helpful. And for me, it came to me through clinical work on migraines. People with migraines are just off the chart sensitive. The real severe ones are light sensitivity. Movement is also a sensitivity for them. So they tend to go in their room in a dark spot, right? Well, one of the things that's helped them diminish the migraine is touching something that is soothing. It's similar to what autistic kids need to have with that hug. That Temple Grandin, for example, remember in her movie, she created her own little device to hug her. So we have, through our 5 senses, all of the tools necessary to take charge of any anxious moment. And the thing is, we've had it all of our lives. Just nobody's ever told us how to activate them to really address the anxious moments. I actually have athletes that their anxiety was so powerful that their vision turned into a blackness around their view. So they came down to a dot of light. That's all they saw. When a wrestler went into a wrestling match, that's what happened to him. One of my Olympic bodybuilders went into a set to do their poses. They literally did not see the stage because of how the blackness overcame them. And yet they still performed. So the power of the brain is amazing. Yeah. My client was in the top 5 in the world for bikini bodybuilders. These are bodybuilders that have to pose in certain sets to demonstrate their muscle formation. And she did it without remembering she did it. That's how powerful the anxiety was. And then when she got through that, she went to number 1 when we got her through that and managing those anxieties. So my final thoughts to you all is that we have the solution right here, literally in our hands, in our 5 senses to manage the anxieties. But what we miss is those people who we can trust and care about us to give us the solutions on how to utilize our sense of smell and sight and taste and feel to really activate very, very powerful tools to make us even better than we are.
Excellent.
And thank you for that so much, Dr. Lowe, because I was a dancer for years, and I did huge shows over in Korea. And when I would get on stage and I would dance, I would literally not see the crowd. It would just be a light. I couldn't see anybody, and that's all I was. So now, and that made me understand. I would say it all the time. I was like, yeah, man, when I would get on stage and dance, I couldn't even see the people. I would just see it. I would just see light. Yeah, that was all I could focus on. Even we did this show at the Olympic Stadium out in Korea, and the stadium was full, and I could not see people. It didn't hit me until the end when I was done, and I looked up and I was like, oh wow, it's full. But whenever I perform, so thank you for that. Yeah.
You guys are a blessing to me. I'm glad to be here with you. Everybody have a great and wonderful rest of the week. Take care.
See you next Monday.
Yes.
So guys, that was Dr. Lowe Whiteman, mental performance coach for Elite. We're going to stay on for a few more minutes and allow questions. Wayne, did you have anything to say about any tips or anything around reducing anxiety for men?
No, I think that we kind of check those boxes. Again, I would just be reiterating on what we talked about earlier. Just basically positivity. Reinforcement. Again, watching what we take into ourselves, you know, to help out. Body scans, like you talked about last week, you know, just doing a body scan and seeing how we are. And then what I spoke about last time, just preparing, you know, just being in preparation, if understanding that I could be possibly in a situation that may induce anxiety. How can I properly prepare for that situation, you know, better prepare for that situation before I get into it? So I think those are some key notes to helping to deal with and prevent anxiety, for sure.
Thank you. And I posted some videos, suggestions on here. The video suggestions also help promote sleep. A lot of people with anxiety have sleep disturbances as well. Anxiety interferes with sleep. Oftentimes I tell my patients, guys, is to put on headphones at night when you go to sleep, and you turn on a YouTube video, either a mindfulness relaxation for anxiety or anything that you think is calming and self-soothing, and put on headphones and to see if that will help promote sleep. Because what that does, it redirects you, right, into the sleep mode. You have that music on, it redirects you to the music. You do your breathing exercises, right? If you need practice, there's videos on breathing techniques for beginners to reduce anxiety. You put those headphones on, you lay down in the bed at night when it's time for bed, take your bath or hot bath and, you know, what have you. And refocus, redirect yourselves, your attention to your breathing and to the relaxing music or whatever you have in the headphones to help you sleep, and see if that works. I do that myself and it works. I have certain videos that I go to that puts me right to sleep when I'm going through anxiety or stress. Are there any questions? Next week, guys, next Monday is going to be part 3 of anxiety, and that will end our series. And after that will be PTSD, trauma. So next week, our special guest will be on April 3rd, 2023, Dr. Amir Rashidian. He's a founder of the Mid-Atlantic Chiropractic Center, managing stress from a physiological perspective, and he is awesome. So I hope you guys can join us next Monday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, our guest will be Dr. Rashidian. He will be on with us. Okay. If there's no questions, we're going to end. Any questions? Thank you guys so much for jumping on. You guys are so awesome. Don't forget to check out the Mental Health Talk website and purchase your copy of the magazine. It's amazing. April's edition is about to come out too, and we do have subscription rates that are like really, really reduced. So we have 2 books that sold out already. So mindfulness meditation for beginners are sold out, and anxiety reduction for kids. Reducing Anxiety in Kids, that book is sold out. But don't worry, I just ordered from the wholesalers. I just ordered some more, and they will be in by the end of this week or next week. So, but those 2 are sold out. But the magazines and other books are in there. We still have Practicing Mindfulness in there in the bookstore, and this is 75 essential meditations that can teach you how to do mindfulness techniques. There's no other questions. We will see you guys next Monday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wayne. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everybody.